Welcome to America's Freedom Seminar. Should religion be a part of good government? Our founders believed in God and His rules of righteousness, and they believed that He is and always was the author of our freedom. Let's show powerful evidence to back up our founders' belief. We'll quote from the Declaration of Independence, 1776. We hold these truths to be self-evident, obvious, that all men are created by God equal under the law of nature. In other words, all men are given equal rights, not equal bodies or circumstances, and our use of these rights will be judged by His laws, His justice. That they are endowed by their Creator as a gift, you see, with certain unalienable rights. These rights cannot be alienated, taken away by someone else. If someone tries to take them away from you, he is stealing your God-given freedom, and he will be punished for it. If he repents, and after God has given him enough opportunity to change, and when each offender makes proper compensation to his victim, then he will be forgiven. That among these rights are, note quickly that the rights listed are incomplete. There are more: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Pursuit does not mean that the government should pursue our happiness for us. That pursuit is our personal responsibility. The founders definitely believed in God and that freedom was a gift from Him. Did you remember that freedom is a religious concept? The reason is that it comes from God, not man. Freedom is therefore a sacred principle and ought to be treated as such. Did the founders try to unite church and state as one power to promote the religious principles of freedom? No. Separate church and state. But they did not separate religion and state. Note this vital point. If you take religious principles away, then the state will crumble, because to survive it rests and thrives upon the religious principles of personal responsibility, honesty, and the Golden Rule. But if government legalizes special favor to a particular church, then that church has an unfair monopoly over all other denominations. Such collusion offends the religious principle of equal rights for all, as well as the Golden Rule. This principle of fairness is extremely important to understand today, where religious principles are being trashed in the name of separation of church and state. This attempt to separate religion from the state is a trick. Don't fall for it. It is played on us to weaken our personal power, which is our freedom. It is done to make us more vulnerable to those who want to rule over us, where they have nearly all of the rights, and they leave you only enough to be heavily taxed to sustain their stolen rights. They wish to make us their slaves. That sounds extreme, but remember that it has always been a problem throughout history. Today is no different than yesterday, in spite of our amazing technological advances that tempt us to think that human nature has also advanced. No, today we have the same selfishness, the tendencies that have plagued mankind from the beginning. Those in the past who build our government buildings and laws knew the difference between church and state and religion and state. You see the religious symbols carved into the Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. This is all very constitutional and proper. No one's rights are being violated by the religious principles exhibited here. This carving of Moses and the Ten Commandments on the right is inside the Supreme Courtroom. Only tyrants and the ignorant would be offended by the justice contained in these commandments, which commandments represent kindness and caring for the individual as well as for the group, and recognize God as our sovereign King and no other. The separation of church and state does not require banishing moral and religious values from the public square. To summarize, the enemies of freedom have tricked many of us into supposing that speaking of religion and applying it to politics is politically incorrect, and worse, against our constitutional rights. Frankly, as you can see, this amoral position is not the truth, and therefore it will not make us free, nor will it keep us free. Now let's look at this in a little different way, quoting a former state Supreme Court justice who said, "Law helps to give society its cohesive structure. We'll liken that structure to a skeletal system. But it is religion that gives life and emotional attachment to that structure. I don't know about you, but I'd much rather enjoy the whole body of freedom rather than limit it only to a skeleton of strict laws we must obey out of duty or out of fear." In other words, religion makes society warm and alive, while moral law is the bones that serve as the center of our social bonds. There is nothing fundamentally wrong with the system we have freely chosen to live within, no matter what our critics want to bleat, growl, and moan about. It is adaptive, and it will adapt. But to improve it, we must improve ourselves. This is the theme of our presentation. Improving ourselves will do more to save America from collapse than anything else we try to do. But there are many who do not realize this. We must never entertain the delightful delusion that we are going to establish morality into American society merely by getting control of the social machinery. How many there are who suppose that electing better men to office will resolve our problems? That is only part of the solution. Such a quick fix fosters the human tendency to go back to sleep and let George do it at the state capitol or in Washington, D.C. Taking personal responsibility to learn more, to grow in wisdom, to become stronger, more capable, and service-oriented will automatically make us better citizens. We tend to vote for those who are like us. Remember this eternal principle. Only better citizens elect better leaders. To improve America, we must improve ourselves first. In our next lesson, we'll learn more about restoring America.